Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another FLP webinar. As always, I'm Ariana. Nothing new here, and honestly, nothing new with our presenter today, Austin Davis, but he'll be exploring the vital role of lights and lasers. As you can see in the webinar topic, it's lights and lasers in self-defense and firearm use. So tonight's topic is designed for firearm enthusiasts and self-defense experts and non-experienced. I know I'm not that experienced with lights and lasers, so I'm definitely going to be learning a lot here tonight, but also anyone interested in enhancing their tactical skills. So Austin will be going over advantages of lights and lasers and the importance of visibility and self-defense. We'll play on words there, you see. But as always, please make sure to submit any questions you have in the comments section, and we will make sure to go over them during the Q&A. And I'm sure Austin he typically addresses some as well as they go through. If not, we'll get through them during the Q&A. But remember, this webinar is recorded, so you'll be able to watch, share later if needed. But thank you all for joining tonight's webinar. Austin, do you want to take it away?
Thank you very much. Hello, my FLP fam. Hope y'all are all safe and happy and doing well. This month's topic is lights and lasers. Now, lights has a very special place in my heart. Lasers, very strange. I've only used a laser defensively, like for a small period of time on a carry pistol, but it's a question I get asked about all the time if I'm in a basic LTC class or in a certain specialty needs group. I get asked about this, and I find it's something we really don't talk about much. So we're going to kind of go through that. Now, when we talk about lasers, let me explain what I mean. I'm talking about all guns are safe and clear. I'm not talking about a red dot. Now, there's a laser in this, but that laser only points to this little piece of glass. You can see it from behind. We're talking about something that projects light down range. So when we talk about a red dot, which we should have, Aaron, let's do a whole thing real soon on whether or not you need a red dot and everything about a red dot. Okay, trust me on this. Put that in your
Okay. Got it written down.
We're talking about that thing that kind of comes on out and points directly to the target. Now, when you think about this, the first thing you want to ask yourself with any piece of gear, whether you're talking about a flashlight, a firearm, a sling, a holster, whatever, is what am I trying to accomplish by adding this equipment to my life? Because anytime we put a new piece of defensive or even recreational shooting equipment, there's a certain amount of training and vetting that we have to do that's kind of a pain. So for me, I really like that. Let's just keep everything as simple as possible. When it comes to lasers, though, there may be some reasons you want to use a laser, and there may be some reasons you don't want to use a laser. One of the first reasons why you may want to use a laser is all guns are safe and cleared, no ammo in the room, and I'm the only one in the house. So if I shoot something, I pretty much can only kill the cat, but we still check anyways. One of the real reasons why we may want to consider a laser, and why a laser for some people might be a bit of a game changer, is your eyesight with or without corrective lenses may not be able to focus on the front sight. So with a laser, we're actually focused on the thing we want to shoot. I also find that in realistic force on force, and I'm an alert instructor, so that stands for Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. And I gunfight every couple of weeks with a couple of hundred cops and with simunitions. And when I ask them when they miss, I said, where were you looking? Almost all of them say, well, I was looking at the target. Well, if we don't reference the little bumpy things or the dot thing, which makes our rear eye kind of the back sight, in a shooting, we're really basically point shooting, even though we really want to be aimed fire. So with the laser, if you activate this thing, and if it's set up properly and it's calibrated correctly, you will be focused on the thing that you want to shoot at or the thing that you need to stop their behavior. So that is one advantage of a laser. There's another really great advantage of a laser, and that is for me to shoot a firearm properly, I need to line up what I want to shoot with, front sight, back sight, and my eyeball. I got to line all these things up. And the way our eyes work is because they're separate, they're only going to focus at one place in time. So I can't focus on all of those. With a laser, what I'm projecting it on is all I have to focus. So I can have the gun down here, up here. And for some people who have limited mobility, some people with shoulder problems, hand strength, they may find that shooting from a more supported close-in position and still be able to register where that round, ideally, if it's all properly set up, should impact, can be very helpful. It's also very helpful for some people if you're shooting a rapidly moving target. Think about an animal trying to attack you. And if you can point that laser at it, maybe that might make it easier. So for some people, the laser is about a vision problem. For some people, it's just getting behind the gun consistently might be an advantage for a laser. I also think that one of the real big advantages of a laser is if you carry a very short sight radius pistol. This is the Ruger LCR. I just absolutely love this little carry gun. But the distance between here and here is so small that any tiny deviation is really going to send that bullet off in a path if you're trying to line up the front and rear integrated sight in this. If I have a laser, that doesn't really matter. If you have a Ruger LCP or one of the really small 380s or really small 9mm, you might find that that laser really helps out with the sight alignment at distance. Of course, hoping you can see it. Before I forget about this point also, lasers basically come in two colors, red and green. My son does not really see red, so whenever I show him a red dot, he really can't see it. Put a green in, he always says, hey, green is good. So you might want to play with the two colors also with lasers. So if you tried a laser before and you said, man, it didn't work for me, try a green one. And if that didn't work for you, try a red one. For me, it's really kind of interesting. I can't really tell the difference of which one pops more when I use it. More than just what I'm shooting at. Of course, if you're shooting something with a red target or a red shirt, that red might vanish. Same with green. But I notice when it comes to colors on a red dot, I pick up the green better. But because of my stigmatism, the red is a circle and the green is more of like a paint splatter. But I can hand this to 15 different shooters and get 15 different responses on it. There's another potential benefit of a laser. I think it really makes a nice training tool. The reason I say that is because in my world, we tend to aim the gun with our body and we check, we affirm, confirm where the sights are, that we're aligned right. Because if you dry fire enough, really and truly, you're almost always going to point perfectly where you need and just need to make fine choices and just check with the sighting system. With a laser, I can tell very quickly, though, when you go through your shot progression, if I see you've got it locked down and you're shooting and the dot on the target, or even if you're dry firing, stays fairly constant, your grip's locked up, your alignment's working with you. But if I see it and I see the laser sort of smear, it's kind of like when you shoot a red dot. It really becomes a really good, almost instantaneous feedback as to whether your grip and your trigger and your body control are all working well. And for that purpose, it works wonderfully. I find a laser in a new shooter sometimes can be pretty helpful. The reason why is a lot of times one of the big problems we have with new shooters is they're really afraid of this thing going bang, 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 but they're so focused down range on the target and holding it steady as they press the trigger. I find a lot of times that I can get them into the first 5, 10, 15 shots to where they're not even registering the recoil because they're so target focused. So for new shooters, it may come in. And there's one final benefit I'd like to talk about, and I almost kind of hate to talk about this one, and that is in some rare cases with some really low motivation attackers, maybe putting a red dot on their shirt or something might make them go away like you're wearing a scary mask. I wouldn't put much stock in it. I need to put that out there because when I talk about lasers, people always say, you put the dot on them and they're going to run away. Well, first off, you put the dot on, they got to look down and see it. They got to register at that. And I'm not so sure I'd bet my life on that. It may come into play with, again, a highly low motivation attacker, but I wouldn't really plan on that being a benefit. Now, while there are some good things about lasers, there are some other things about lasers that may not be so great. One is where you're going to mount it. This one used to have a laser max on it. If you can see right here, you replace this little forward lug and the little piece clicked in here. The only problem I had with that was it was really great in form factor, but you had to use your index finger to get it to fire or find that little button on this side to get it to fire. I carried it for a while and I just couldn't imagine any situation where I'd have enough time to turn the laser on. I also found out that a lot of times because the switch had to be big enough in this little tiny hole that even bouncing around inside the holster, it would activate the laser, run the batteries down. So one of the real problems with lasers is you have to mount them. Now, if you have a small revolver or some stock panels where you can put an extra think like a 1911. When you grab the grip or the stock of the gun, it's the button's already there and it will come out the side. The only problem with that is that's great. Probably don't have any holster problems, holster compatibility issues. The only problem is when you high index, your finger is now over the laser. So this could be a training problem unless you are one of the 10% or so of lefties, which means it'll be on the correct side for you, which is probably the only thing in the firearms industry that's universally built for those type people. There's also rail mounts where we could mount it to the accessory rail. And this has some advantage because you don't deal with the left or right offset, but it's going to be below the center line. And if you think about it, a bullet doesn't come out as a laser beam. It has a ballistic arc to it. So we have to find that place where we want the laser to intersect on the front part of that arc and the back part of that arc. And that pretty much comes out to training when you mount this thing to figure out what the offset's going to be, what the offset is at different distances. So mounting can be kind of a bit of a pain. You can also, when it comes time to activate it, again, we want to make sure the switch works well for us. If it is a pressure switch, this is a DG switch for my Surefire on one of my patrol pistols. This is cool because when you grab it, it automatically comes on. I kind of like that because if you think about it, there's probably no downside to just automatically having the laser on. There's definitely a downside to thinking every time I pull the gun off and need the laser, I have to press a switch or I have to push a switch or hit a little tiny button that may or may not be designed to work with me under stress as a little tiny fine motor skill. So when it comes to switchology, you want to think about, does that switch work with you or does it not? When it comes to line of sight, line of bore, the only way to know where the accuracy is to go shoot some patterns and see where the dot meets. And you're going to find out no matter how you set it, if you set it where the dot is and the bullet is, if you run the target out a little farther or a little closer back in, you're going to probably find that this thing has a certain spread on it. And as a responsible gun owner, it's really important to know your limits of your gear. It's like if you ever come to one of my active shooter classes, one of the things I really want to talk about is where's your wobble zone? You know, at what point can you say pretty much, I've got an 8-inch circle nailed down no matter what's happening, and then figure that out so that you know that maybe for you to get something, you know, this big around guaranteed under pressure on demand is maybe 5 yards, maybe 10 yards, 15, 45 yards, whatever it is for you that you know you can get on. You want to know where your limit of your practical accuracy is. Same thing goes with the laser. You also might find that after a certain distance, it becomes really hard to see that laser. I'm not really convinced that using a laser is faster than picking up a set of sights. But for some people who have a hard time seeing their sights, or they find comfort from shooting from awkward positions or not having to get their head behind the gun, maybe that's worth a trade-off. In the end, here's kind of my view on lasers before we start talking about lights. If you could find somebody who's got one and try it, that'd be great. Is every time you go to any kind of gear, you get what you pay for, buy once, cry once. The good equipment's going to cost a bit. And if you don't like it, it just ends up in a drawer with all those holsters you don't use or the lights you don't use or whatever. So this is a pretty significant investment you have in just the finances of it. The second problem is you need to train for this. If you carry multiple guns, you're going to need to start putting this in the multiple gun category. So we want everything to kind of work the same. So I'm not against lasers. The cool thing about a laser is as long as you have sights, if you pull out and the battery's dead, thing craps out, it's got some lint in it or plugged up the hole for some reason, you're still no difference back with the iron sights. So there's not really much with that, but I need you to train for plan B. So if you ever come out and you can't find the dot or the dot's not working, make sure you go ahead and say, hey, if something really goes goofy, I can go to my iron sights. I'm comfortable with that. I know where my wobble zone is, where my predictability, I'm going to get within whatever parameters that I want on demand. And if there's something I missed about lasers, just shoot us a comment in the chat over there and we'll pick back up on it. Now, one quick thing I'm probably going to comment on is what about lasers on rifles? If you have night vision, that's a whole other chapter. I don't really see the benefit of a laser in a long gun because we already have a lot of sight radius and if it's in close. So if I'm wrong about that, feed it to me in the comment section or contact me, shoot me an email and straighten me on out. But I'm not that convinced a laser is all that great. Before we go to lights, let's talk about laser light combinations. Sometimes you're going to go ahead and see you have the light and there'll be a laser integrated into it. Might have some holster compatibility problems because most of these holsters are designed to fit just really tight around there, and that could be kind of an issue. That's another thing you have to adjust and fiddle with. And the problem is for most of these to be adjusted, it's a little tiny Allen wrench, you move these little screws in to get it lightened up. And then now I'm talking, since this is going to be at the bottom of this, a pretty long offset distance, which again might be difficult for you to figure out for ballistic arc, to have exactly where the dot and the bullet go together, or to just know where the holdover is, that if the dot's here, that I'm going to be shooting 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch high at whatever distances. So that all kind of comes back to training. Final thing before we leave lasers though, think about eye safety for pointing it in training or whatever, or don't ever look down the barrel, because I cannot guarantee that a laser that's bright enough with enough energy to project far enough for you to see this at a target at a realistic self-defense distance is going to be eye safe. So just be real careful when you're cleaning it, futzing with it, and just kind of thinking about that. So if you're futzing with it, be careful. Also, it is not a cat toy, so don't go there. All righty. Now, with lasers out the way, and please, again, if I missed something tonight on lasers, go ahead and just shoot me something in the comments. At the end of this, we'll get back to it. I'd love to hear what you got to think about it, especially if you have a different idea about the light and laser combo on a long gun. Be very curious what y'all think about that, because you might have something different than me. Let's talk about flashlights and self-defense. Flashlights is part of a either standalone or with a firearm tool. First off, does anyone know, for valid extra points, why it's called a flashlight? The reason is when they were first invented, the batteries were so low powered and ran down so quickly, you would only be able to flash it, see what you could, flash it, see what you could. Hence, flashlights. I became a police officer in 1996. I started carrying a daily flashlight in 92. It was the Surefire P6. It was 60 looms for 60 minutes. And I thought it was Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. My phone camera is probably 50 looms nowadays. These things have come on more and more and more. I get this question all the time before we go into depth about flashlights is, when is bright too bright? When it replaces the sun, because that's kind of what we're looking for is natural sunlight. Now, I've been playing with flashlights defensively for a long time. As a police officer, they're a mandatory tool, even much more so than a just non-law enforcement position, because we have to go hunt people in dark buildings and dark nights all the time. Very different than your average person's kind of light use. I am a certified low light instructor for Surefire. I went through week 1 and 2 with their course back in 2016. I also wrote a book for Concealed Coalition on low light fighting. We'll put the link in somewhere where you can find it. That book is not on Amazon for some reason, but check with us in the show notes and we'll figure it out for you. And also in my Virtual Tactical Academy, I had a fixed location that taught not only Virtual Tactical Academy, but we also use stress vests and the controlled lighting in my fixed location. And for about 2 years around low light program. So I have a certain affection for this, but I also have affection for this because tomorrow night when I'm on patrol, I'm going to need a flashlight. So to me, it's not one of these widgets. It's a real defensive tool. Now, when it comes time to talk about flashlights, the thing I like about a flashlight is we always think about, in our community, the gun community, about a flashlight and a gun. For me, though, it's a standalone tool, because no matter where we go, it's the lowest level of force I can use. And a modern defensive flashlight is just a thing of beauty. And it can project force in a really great way. So when we think about this, it's socially acceptable. It's pretty much legal anywhere you go. And it allows you a lot of options without having to use any force. And I may go over this again, but if I'm walking out in a dark parking lot and some dudes roll up behind me, I'm gonna turn around, whoop, give them a blast of light right in the face and go, first words out of mouth are, sorry, didn't see you guys. Boom. Now they've got something called ropes-it-in. That's when the lens of the eye, the back of the eye, the screen part of the eyeball has had all of the little chemicals blown out of it, and you got that sort of purple ball in front of you. So now basically I've taken their field of vision away from them for a few seconds. It gives me a chance to decide. They're coming up in front of me, I can go ahead and give a blip towards their feet and go, oh, what's going on, guys? Or whoop, right in the face. And again, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. This thing went off. Funny little switch. And also, if you're going through a place, and as we're going to talk about in a second, when you think of no light, it's not really a criminal element because they got to find you, you got to find them. It's really going to be inconsistent or spotty light. So for me, when I'm walking through a parking lot or part of a apartment complex or whatever, to me, all dark holes have threats till they're cleared. So it's just bloop, little blip of light, bloop, little blip of light, and never know when you find something that shouldn't be there, something that's hiding. So for me, this is a force multiplier tool. Now, when we talk about these things, flashlights and defensive things, the first thing we always think of is guns and lights. And the first question I always get is weapon mounted light or hand mounted light? Really and truly, this should probably come a little later in my talk, but let's just get this out the way because I can see a couple of you in the back of the room going, let's get to that point. Let's get to that point. Let's make this real simple. When it comes to long guns, like my patrol shotgun, we have to have a defensive gun. It's going to need, a defensive gun's going to need a dedicated light. The reason is it's very difficult, bordering on impossible, to operate a handheld light and the long gun at the same time. So you really want to attach this thing so it works together. Now, you'll notice on my patrol shotgun, I have the same TLR HL1 stream light that I have on one of my usual patrol pistol. I kind of have two. It's kind of hard to explain why, but just bear with me. So these switches work exactly the way my patrol pistol works. And what I like about this is there's a whole lot of flood and not a lot of really tight hot spot. The reason is this is a relatively short range tool. And usually this is something I use when I'm going indoors on a call. And so for me, I don't really need to go down a lot of distance. What I really want to do is be able to fill the room as much as possible. And I need somewhat of a hotspot, but I don't need that long range hotspot. It's really strange in lights. When you think about defensive lights, you can get anything you want, but you can't get everything. And this for me is a really nice balance in what is a sort of traditional shorter range tool. Now, when you start talking about longer range tools like my patrol rifle, this is Surefire. This one is a lot more focused, a lot more hotspot, goes a lot farther because this platform may have to go farther. So if I'm pulling this out the patrol car, I need more distance. That's great. The problem is if I'm using this in my house for home defense one night, I lose a whole lot of that room filling ability. What I gain though is if I put this right in somebody's eyes, I get a lot of blinding effect back with this, but also it allows me to see farther. So if I knew I was going into an active shooter call and I had to go down a hallway, I was in a school not too long ago, it was 135 yards from an intersection to the end of the hallway and 45 yards the other side. So if you're in a low light situation, you need to see what's in somebody's hand, because the whole purpose of this light is to give us situational awareness. If you can't see it, you can't shoot it. I need to know, is that a beer can or a revolver? I need to know if that's a cell phone or a Glock in that person's hand. And that's going to take light. So when we talk about weapon mounted lights, if it's a long gun, done deal. Put it on your long gun. If it's defensive long gun, away you go. Try to match the quality of the beam for the use of the tool. Handguns. Oh my gosh, the internet's on fire because we have devolved into camps. Oh, you're going to die in the streets if you don't have a weapon light. Or, oh my gosh, you're never going to carry that big old thing in your pants if you do. All right, let's talk pros and cons. Personally, for me, this is my daily carry light. It's a Surefire stiletto. I need to buy their newest, biggest, baddest, brightest light. Just hadn't gotten around to ordering the darn thing. I've been carrying this for 4 years. This stays right in my offhand pocket. This thing is a very amazing tool. It doesn't really have the candela, the really tight hot spot to use this as a truly effective defensive light like my Cloud Defense, which has an incredible hot spot. But this thing is a flat form factor. It's got a perfect clip. It fits right in the offside. I don't leave the house without this, either in that pocket or clipped inside the waistband, right opposite of where I put my firearm. So both these things are in the front appendix position. I can boom, 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 and pick them on out. The great thing about this light is while I lose a whole lot of stun them, blind them with pupil searing candela, the beauty of this thing is once I start this up, I can step it down. So I can work on lights. I can find things in a backpack without blowing myself out. But if I hit the back end, excuse me, it goes right into full power mode. So handheld lights. For me, in a everyday carry defensive person out in the real world, handheld lights is a must. Weapon mounted light is sort of a nice to have. If you think about it, I use this to go search for trouble. If I find trouble and I need the weapon mounted light, I've got the problem I've got with weapon mounted lights. I've got this with law enforcement and my civilian users. I'm not picking sides here. It's we just tend to point a lot of guns at a lot of people we shouldn't. As an alert instructor, again, I spend a lot of time gunfighting with cops from all over the state of Texas, and I get a lot of people pointing at guns when they shouldn't. And before you start screaming at the internet and pound on the keyboard for me, here's the deal. If I use this on my home defense light and I'm searching through and I'm using this to light up where I'm looking, and all of a sudden my son, my wife, my mother who's staying with me comes on out, would you feel comfortable me pointing a gun with a light on it, even with the properly indexed finger, at your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife? Of course not. So yes, you can bounce this off the floor or bounce this off the ceiling and fill the room with enough light to get by, but that's a training issue, not an equipment issue. So if you want a weapon mounted light, that's fine. The problem is a lot of people sort of decide to sort of split the difference. You'll see these small, very tiny, compact lights on small, tiny guns, which, okay, they have their place. The problem is they don't have the reach and the throw of the bigger lights. This thing throws out massive amount of lights. Just for sake of argument, this is a Surefire X300 Turbo Series, again with a DG switch. Now, all these switches operate just the same as always, but I don't have to change my grip or anything. All I have to do is just squeeze this finger right here in my normal shooting grip, and I get this to activate. The great thing about this tool is my grip doesn't have to change to get it to activate. The bad thing is I'm carrying this gun, and then some days I'm carrying this pistol. They both have different activation switches. So we either need to get both of them working the same, or we have to make sure we're very clear in our training to understand how these switches interact with me in a defensive situation, because in a time of crisis, it's not easy. So handheld or weapon mounted light, when we're talking about defensive pistol, shooter's choice. You choose. I think that the handheld light is mandatory. Pistol, we'll call it nice to have. I really personally cannot imagine having a gun next to my bedside at night that didn't have an attached pistol light, but also I can't imagine going to sleep with my defensive gun and not having my handheld light also. I really think they work both well together. In case y'all are wondering, if you watch any of our Concealed Coalition University episodes on low light, or if you read my book on low light, you'll know what this is. It's a Firearm switch. The theory is you can turn it over and you can go ahead and shoot that gun and then fire this thing off from this position. Yes, but really for me, the most important thing is I can go ahead and use the phone. I can open a door. I can get my hands free and not have to set the light down or lose it. I can flip it back and get it in. I can grab a doorknob. It just allows me to function with this light, and they're pretty handy. They also have a clip on it, which for me, man, if you have a pistol, it needs a holster. If you have a long gun, it needs a sling. And if you have a defensive light, it really needs to have a clip. This one is not low profile. And when I fly with this, I always make sure that I unscrew this. I take the Firearm switch off, and I just use it. I put this in my bag, and I screw this back together. When these two parts are together, this may look a little funky to TSA, or if you're going in someplace where it's a non-permissive environment for tools. Also, if you are just bopping around a non-permissive environment and you have this in your hand, this makes for a very skillful impact tool. And yes, some of them have the little raised edges around for defensive use. The only problem with that is they will just chew through your pants in a couple of days. And I'm not so sure I really want to be sharing DNA with somebody else around this. I'm not that convinced that's that helpful, especially when you offset the advantages you may have having a serrated bezel with the problems you have with ripping up your pants, because you're going to live with this thing in your pants for a long time. And if you do what I do, which is most days I'm carrying this in front of my pistol, inside of my waistband, I really don't want something on my tender parts grinding away on that. So handgun, weapon light, they both have their pros, they both have their cons. You're going to need to get a holster for it if you do decide to EDC carry. This one is from Tenacore. I do not make anything off Tenacore, but right now this is all I carry. I just think they make the best concealed holsters possible. The downside to Tenacore is if you want to get them to build you one, it's for a very narrow, they're designed for professional users. So it's going to be for a very narrow set of firearms and a very narrow set of firearms mounted lights. So if you're somebody who has a, Heckler & Koch P7 squeeze pistol, they're not making a holster for that. But if you're a Glock, a Smith & Wesson, a SIG person, they're going to probably have a holster for you that'll work with your light, whether it's the big light or the little light. Now, I kind of alluded to it before, and I really do think when it comes to defensive uses for a light, that really and truly it extends past just shooting the thing with a gun. I really do think it's pretty helpful. I travel internationally about a month a year. My wife and I get away and go to some place. I travel with this all the time. If this is all I had in India, in Egypt, I'm trying to think of all the places we go where I've traveled, I feel pretty comfortable at night. You know, if you're just some sort of local dude and all of a sudden two people walk down the street and you roll up and, whoops, sorry, hey, didn't see you. Hola. You know, these are not the quick, easy, low risk, low possibility of resistance kind of people you want to screw with. So it's worked out real well. I've stopped a lot of threats in their tracks with a big blast of light. If you take a tactical pen and add it to a flashlight. Now, again, I'm not talking your cell phone light. I'm talking a dedicated flashlight. You can go a lot of places in this world. We may have already talked about this. I don't know. This is a Schrade. Mine is pink. If you look at it, it's got little hearts on it because when I take and place my flashlight through the metal detector to go in the museum or go to the airport, these things are very innocuous. There's actually a better tactical pen, and it's dirt cheap. It's called a Zebra pen. They make it out of stainless steel. They make the pen, and they also make the mechanical pencil. I think the mechanical pencil's got some advantages on it. You get these off Amazon. They're like $3 or $4. This will go through anywhere. The tactical pen is put your thumb on the end of it, and you just basically use it as an impact tool. Works really well. I like the fact that if you ever had to use it in an attack, that it doesn't look like you were carrying some sort of non-magnetic knife or an ice pick or a tactical screwdriver. It just looks like you had something really easy. I also find where I carry it when I travel is I like to take it and put it right in the middle of the front of my shirt. And the reason I like this is because I can get to it with either hand, and it's right on my midline, and it's right there. I recommend, though, if you're carrying overseas, if you have this, go ahead and write some notes in a little small spiral pad, have it on you as well. Put the spiral pad, this pen, this on the magnetometer, go through it. It won't usually, I've never had a problem doing this for years. Now, if you really want to take it up a step and it is legal where you're going, a pepper spray and a defensive light is the absolute winning combination. The reason why a pepper spray is so good with a defensive handheld light is because one of the real problems we have is overreacting or underreacting in a critical situation. If you overreact, you're in legal trouble. If you underreact, you're in you trouble. So for me, the great thing about this is really the only tool available that if I make a mistake, my response kind of is my bad. So if you're in one of those situations where you're passing through a dark situation, someone jumps out and you think, is this a threat or not? And you do spray them. I'm not aware of any deaths outside one or two anomalies that have happened over the years. Pepper spray is a very safe, less lethal. I would rate it pretty comfortably as non-lethal. And I've been a certified pepper spray instructor since 1992. Made a lot of grown men cry in my life. And I'm telling you, don't underestimate pepper spray, especially when it's coupled with a flashlight. If you ever seen my pepper spray class at Concealed Close University, the problem with pepper spray is like yoga. Is yoga good? I don't know. What yoga is it? Who taught it? What are you trying to fix with the yoga? It depends on the instructor, the type of yoga, whatnot. Saber and Palm are absolutely my two favorite. Saber makes a Mark 6 unit, which is a little bigger than this, which is my all-time favorite. They don't really sell it to civilians for some unknown, bizarre reason. But one of these Palm units is about $12, about a box of range ammo, maybe less than a box of range ammo. When you buy them, you can get them off Amazon. Buy them 6, 12 in a bunch. They make wonderful gifts for people. I like it with the clip right here because I can clip it anywhere. It disappears in a hand, socially invisible, and very little likelihood of it blowing back on you for legal reasons. When it comes time to figure out how to use a gun and a flashlight in a low light environment, there's two problems here. Normally, when I talk to people and I say, have you ever had any low light training? Some people will say, yes, we went to a gun school and there was a low light component to it. And I go, well, that's fantastic. Because you know me, I think training should be recent, relevant, and realistic. I love this. But usually what happens, you go to fancy gun schools, we shoot all day, they let you out early, then you come back after dinner, and we're going to wait till the sun goes down to start to shoot. And then by then it's not really the sun going down. It's really hard to get live fire in low light of quality in a lot of places. Now, if you have an indoor range, the problem can be solved and sorted on out. But really and truly, the problem is you're just learning to shoot the gun with the flashlight. And the problem I've got with that is there's just a whole lot more to figuring out how we get these two things to work together. Now, the first time you ever shoot a gun in a flashlight, you're going to find out that if you're using a handheld light as your source of illumination, you're going to find you're basically shooting one-handed. And to try to line this thing up and this thing up takes special training and special techniques. It is not that difficult. I assure you, you have conquered far more complex skills than this, but it does take specific training from someone who is qualified to teach this. You can practice your live fire, low light, handheld skills at the range. All you have to do is just notice where that beam is going, control this, control the firearm, and away you go. The real problem I've got, though, is not teaching you to shoot the firearm with a flashlight in your hand and calling it low light training. For me, low light training is a whole different kettle of fish. It's about searching out, being able to quickly identify good people, bad people, unknown people, how to control them with light, when to pull the firearm out, how you're going to integrate the handheld with your one-handed basically draw stroke, how you're going to engage on this. If you have any kind of pistol malfunction, what techniques you're going to have to use to clear it, or to manage doors and windows and hallways and stairwells with this in your hand. It's a very specialized thing. So the closer we can get you to the environment you are going to operate in, the better you're going to do it. Also, any behavior not learned under stress cannot be recalled under stress. So we need to pressure test this. We need to put you in an environment where it's completely safe. So we have live fire, we have in low light, we have scenario training, and we also have do-it-yourself training. I have a dedicated smart pistol that got the laser beam there, okay? Just for working around in the house and training. No one can ever mistake this for a real firearm. Hopefully they can't mistake a real firearm. The advantage is it works in my Glock holsters. And the beauty of this thing is I cannot load a real firearm in this at all. So if you want, you can practice all your angles. You can figure out when you need to turn the light on, when you need to turn it off. If you want to keep it on or keep it off, you can start to also figure out when it comes to fighting in low light or lower light. Sometimes, you need to take and figure out in your home where you need to arm wave and turn that light on back up into one of the darker spots. Now the whole room is lit up. You don't need to light up to see what's going on, and you've created a photonic barrier between you and the threat out there. So you get a bunch of light on. So it's not about ninja hunting in the dark. Sometimes it's about strategic light turning on. You might want to think about one of the most common places you might have to deal with low light is going to be at nighttime, get interrupted in your sleep, answering the door, going out to hear a noise in the backyard. Some of these things I don't recommend doing. I think you call and outsource your violence at that point in time and get people in there. But to master the light, you're going to need to do some dry runs in your home and really plan this out. But again, if you can at all afford the time and you can afford the money and the time away from your family and your profession and your playtime, go find a dedicated low light class. It will really work out well, especially if you're using training pistols. And in my school, we use the stress vest, which means when you get shot with the laser beam, it went to a pain module, so we didn't have to wear iPro because there's no real projectiles going. If you go to a simunition school where they're going to shoot simunition rounds at you, you're going to have to gear up with a headset, neck protection, and end up with a bunch of scars all over you, even shooting through. So if you're going to do that, make sure that the person who's training you with the simunitions is really qualified and dialed in with the use of simunitions, so it doesn't just turn into sort of a game of gotcha. In closing, the problem with low light and the thing that makes me nervous about a laser is something called mistake of fact shooting. So if you don't have a light, but you have a laser in your gun, it tells you where the gun's pointed, but it doesn't illuminate enough to tell you if you should be pointing the gun there, or to tell you if the person is complied. Because remember, anytime we're in a defensive thing, we have 5 things. wrap. It needs to be innocent. You didn't start this conflict. It needs to be immediate. You need to stop them right now. It needs to be reasonable. There's 2 parts to reasonable. Your perception of this is a lethal threat needs to be reasonable, and your response needs to be reasonable. It needs to be avoidable. And before you tell me, well, we have castle doctrine in the state, or we have stand your ground, or we have duty retreat. I hear you. I got you. I'm from Texas. I got you. boo. But here's the deal. If I can just shut the door and lock it and not have to get in a gunfight, I win. If I can walk away from the situation, I win. So if it's avoidable, it's fine. It has to be proportional. For all 5 of those things, if we forget any one of those or we don't meet those requirements, we're at jeopardy of losing our freedom from that defensive use encounter, force encounter. So that's why a defensive light is a non-negotiable. Really, you need to get a good high quality one. It's a new skill, and like all new skills you learn how to run this thing, it's very highly perishable. And if you don't believe me, have you ever like gone to a shooting school or you bought a big stockpile, you went and you shot, and man, you go, man, I got this, dude. I'm FLP's answer to gunfighter. You don't shoot for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then you go back to shoot, and in your first 20, 30, 40 rounds, you're like, have I ever shot a gun before? These are all perishable skills. So remember, your training has to be recent, relevant, and realistic. And recent of these is the most important. If you went to the best low light shooting school, we spent 2,000 rounds over 2 weeks in critical dynamic situation simulations, and we had the world's best simunitions instructors. We had stress vests. We had the best trained role players. How much of that do you retain after a week, after 2 weeks, after 4 weeks, after 6 weeks, a year? See, that's my problem with a lot of police training is we're on a 2-year training cycle. For example, we need to go through active shooter training in my state. Every law enforcement officer has to have 16 hours of that every 2 years. Great. Loving it. Here's the only problem. There's a whole lot of hours in 2 years. And if you do 16 hours at January 1 of this year and you wait 2 more years and some of that, we're in that point, you have an active shooter, how much of that material is still locked in the procedural memory where it pops out under stress? Because under stress, anything that's not learned under stress can't be recalled under stress. And all this is a perishable skill. Basically comes down to equipment, training, and tactics. Now, one final thing that was on my sheet of things I need to discuss with y'all was about lights and light quality. When it comes to handheld, Mod Light builds a great light. Cloud Defensive builds a fantastic light. Surefire's been building lights longer than some of y'all in the audience have been alive. All of them are great lights. If you're looking for the best bang for the buck, pardon the expression, but you just can't go wrong with the Streamlight. I think for the price and the quality, these things are bomb-proof. I've seen some other brands take a dump. I tell you, Streamlight just keeps on chugging and the price is affordable. So something about Streamlight to think about. Yes, you can go on Amazon. Phoenix, if you're looking for a budget, I've had real good luck with Phoenix. I carried a small PD 35, I think, for a couple of years once. Worked out real well. The thing cost like $40. I carried it probably a year or two, I think from like 2010 to 2012, maybe something like that. And it's funny how many times that I would look down the washer and go, wow, there's a light on the washer. No, it was the Phoenix PD. It had gone through a wash cycle in my pocket and came out just fine. I've had real good luck with it. But buy once, cry once, buy high quality. If you do decide you're going to get one that uses batteries, more than likely it's going to be the CR123, the lithium batteries. I'm a huge fan of using the actual Surefire batteries. These things have like a 10-year shelf life. So if you buy them in bulk, they're not going bad on you. They have a switch in them, it's my understanding, so that if there's a short, this thing does not release a bunch of energy and burn up your gear bag, your firearm, your car, your house, whatever. And the only downside is they're a bit pricey, and we don't really have an accurate way of knowing when these things have run down or not. I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of rechargeable. I was the Luddite that was like going, no, I love my CR123s. I've had my CR123s for a long time. I don't want a rechargeable. How will I know it's recharged? Look, I recharge my phone. I recharge everything. So if you haven't used it in a while, there's a certain amount of parasitic drain that can happen. Pull it out, charge it on up. If you're in my situation, at Hurricane Barrel coming through, I made sure that everything was plugged in and charged up before the hurricane came on through. I'm going to be on patrol tomorrow afternoon, probably in tomorrow evenings if things kick off. So I'm going to run through real quick tonight and plug everything in to make sure everything's good to go for shift tomorrow. My poor town got beat up pretty bad by Barrel. Most people are back to power, but not everybody. So I'm definitely going to be dealing with low light if I hold over tomorrow on shift. So if you know bad things are coming, go ahead and prepare for it. A couple of questions that came to me beforehand was, do you prefer a handheld light or a weapon-mounted light? They say, I want to keep the light away from my body and not give away a position. What's your preference? So let's talk about that for a second. There is a shooting technique called the FBI technique where we will try to get figure out how we get a picture. There we go. There we go. So you hold it off this way, and it shines away from the light. The theory is when people shoot, they'll shoot the light, not you. When I find that people are doing simunition battles, it's amazing how often the light gets shot, how often the hand the holding light gets shot. So maybe some advantage of that. The problem I've got, though, is this is a very specific skill set, and to line this gun up and this light out here have to get two converging things, and they're probably about 5 feet apart or 4 feet apart. So this has some use for it. For me, the real use for holding light away from your body is if I'm in a position of cover and I want to see something on the other side of the room, I'll stick my hand out there and move it on around. So yeah, and if you have a weapon mounted light, you're trying to search the room, again, you can hit the ceiling, umbrella, or baseboard and work it from there. But if you're trying to scan the room like this, that unknown, you may have your out, and it could be an issue. So as far as I'm concerned, weapon mounted lights for long guns, 100%. They're nice to have. They're not a mandatory on a defensive light. Having said that, the gun I sleep with every night when I go to bed has got a weapon mounted light on it, but it's also got a handheld light. The reason I like two lights is one is none, two is one. If one of these takes a dump, I still have some illumination because I cannot shoot. I cannot deal with anything I cannot see clearly. And, I'm kind of old. My eyes are kind of funky. I got astigmatism. So I don't have time in the middle of a crisis necessarily to put on glasses and looking down a hallway and think of the longest cross diameter distance, maybe from a hallway across your dining room. That could be, a 25, 45 yard distance. What is in their hand? Is that a knife? Is that a gun, a beer can, a cell phone? Something to think about. Laser light combination home defense pistol. Yeah, they're a little pricey. They're a little offset. One thing, though, we didn't talk about was strobe effect. They are lovely in discos and dance clubs. The real problem with strobe effect is it is a disorienting. It's disorienting to the bad guy. It's disorienting to me. Because I'm doing this for so long. I do a lot of live fire, low light training with my students. When we put a strobe in their hand and they start firing, it's amazing how random their shots become. So not a real big fan of this. I'm also not a real big fan of I toggle twice to get the strobe or one long beam on the strobe or whatever. It should be one press and right there. Now, a strobe does have an effect on an everyday carry. That was 2 quick strobes on this one. What I find a strobe on your everyday carry situation is we're in a low light situation. She and I are coming out of some sort of festival and there's a lot of cars going. We think somebody could be drunk. As I'm crossing the street, the strobe, I think, has a really good effect on drivers. If I'm in the middle of the road at night and off the side and I'm trying to change a tire and people are coming down that road, I really think that's where a strobe comes in, a strong, powerful strobe, throw a light out there. This stays in my pocket, whether I'm on civilian wear or in uniform. When I'm in uniform working a crash scene and somebody's coming up, I pull this one out, hit it twice, I get the strobe going. I have a really good track record of getting appliance with drivers. So definitely there. How do you fine tune your laser mounted underbarrel sight? The same way you do all. There'll be 2 little set screws and there's going to be a little teeny tiny Allen wrench that comes with it. If you only take one thing away from this, get a bright piece of tape, whether that's blue masking tape or something, and tape it onto that thing, because when you set it down, you'll lose it. It falls around, you'll lose it. And then on it, write this on this piece of masking tape, take a Mac slot, and then write, this is for my underbarrel laser, write it on both sides, so that every time, otherwise you end up with that little Allen wrench in your kit or on your desk, and you don't know what the heck it's for, and then when you need to adjust it. When you're making these adjustments, make them very small and do not tighten them more. It's real easy to overstrip or to stress that laser module in there. So you got to loosen one side up and then loosen the other side up, then tighten it. And these are gentle. These are not, massive, powerful strokes, just very, very tiny. So, and then rail with green or red dot, shooter's choice preference. My son can't see red. Green is good. For me, green I pick up better, but for me, red is closer to a circle of my astigmatism. So you just have to try before you buy. Do we pick up any questions, or we got no questions from the crowd?
The last one, green, red dot, that one was also in the comments. The other questions, there was one that what company is that purple magazine base plate?
Okay, this is a cool widget. Don't know where I got it. It's one of those things I've had forever. It's a weighted Glock base plate. So when I've got this in here, I can rack the gun without having to have it locked back. It's got the same weight as a firearm. So when I go to draw, I get the same mass, I get consistency. I find when I do dry firing draw training or manipulation training with an unweighted gun, when I put the weight in it, it just throws everything. It's a whole different kettle of fish for me. So I got no idea. I think it was Dylan Precision, but I wouldn't bet my life on it. It was kind of, here, there's a name on it. It's a Alpha Academy, Double Alpha Academy, something or another. And it says Glock on it. But once you played with this, that lets me know that it doesn't have live firearms in it, though. It's great weight. Love it. One of my favorite training tools.
Sweet. Well, I think that was the only one. Everyone else was just commenting back and forth. No questions though. But you took my job in helping you with the questions. Usually I'll tell them to you. So I was like, let me get on and help. And then you already have it taken care of. I was like, okay, I'll just sit here and look like a pretty girl.
If that's your role, you're doing it lovely. Let me tell you, you're
Oh,
doing it lovely. I hope we got the point across today
definitely.
that really and truly that if you are into guns defensively, this light thing is a must to master. If you have somebody in your family who's just not a gun person, that's great. You know, if you have an 8-year-old daughter, a powerful flashlight's a beautiful tool. You know, and plus I use my flashlight for everything. You know, we're at a restaurant. I can't read the darn restaurant. It's just amazing. Once you start carrying, you know, I have people that carry knives all the time. And they go, it's not to stab people, it's for useful things. And if you have a knife, you cut on Amazon packages, you peel an apple with it, you do all kinds of things. The flashlight's the same thing. And what's so sad is the minute everybody knows you carry a flashlight, it will shock you the number of times during the day somebody goes, let me borrow your flashlight. And I was kind of go, I'm going to have to follow you. It's like the old trick. I don't know if you know this. I learned this from my friend Anthony. It's like if you loan a mark slot to somebody, just keep the top. So just loan them the mark slot. That's how you get your mark slot back. You give them the top back, you don't get it back. So there you go.
Smart. That's smart. But if you don't have any other last remarks, comments, tips to say, then I'll close it out for us. Good. Sweet. Well, Austin, thank you again for joining us for, I think you've been on a lot of webinars and you're on with us next month. So everyone come back for de-escalation. But yep.
And would you do me a favor? Can you contact Conceal Coalition? So if anybody wants to buy the low light book, it's not on Amazon, my de-escalations book. So just put something in the notes. So if you guys want the low light book, also, if you just pester FLP to have a class that's got low light, we'll come out. I'll bring my smart pistols so that we can do it indoors. So we don't have to worry about any time of day. We can do it in a hotel room. I'll bring my CCATs, my cover concealment angle trainers, so we can learn to work the angles. It's just the safest, sanest way to get everything but live fire and low light training out. So we can hold 20 people easily in a class. We can do a class for 2 hours and roll them over and fill it out. So if you guys want it, talk to her. She'll get FLP and Conceal Coalition together, and we will come out to your town and make you low light favorite.
Yep, that would be a lot of fun. But if any of you guys do have any additional questions, like Austin said, just email us. So you can email me, marketing@firearmslegal.com. If you want to learn more about Austin, the training courses Conceal Coalition has, and just Firearms Legal Protection, there's a discounted price as well if you do want to sign up for protection with FLP, and that'll be in the description if you aren't already protected. And I will add, I'm pretty sure I have some of the Conceal Coalition book links that you've given me in the past in the description, but if they're not there, I'll re-add them so you guys can go back, click them, use them whenever you guys feel. But thank you all again for joining this month's webinar.
Real quick, if you buy the de-escalation book and can read it before next month, this thing is going to really, it's called priming for adult learners. And then when you hear this, it's just going to make it so much easier for you. So if you get the book, you'll be ready for the webinar and you're going to be much, much ahead.
Oh yeah, that's a good tip actually. But everyone remember just to click the links below, and there's a questionnaire down there. It just helps me know what topics you want to see in the future. I really appreciate hearing from all of you guys, but our future webinars are always going to be on Facebook and YouTube, so you'll see us here. But thanks again, everyone, for joining tonight. As always, have a great rest of your night. Remember, protect yourself, we'll protect you.